Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining today's first live stream news summary from Moscow program. It's 21st of October. Now it's 13 past 11 in the morning, Moscow time, and as always, I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments that Russian media is focused on, and hopefully you will find news segment informative and useful. And if so, dear friends, sir, please like the video, leave some commentary, share if you can with your friends. This might help to further develop this project, reach wider audience. If you, after new segment, dear friends, if there will be any questions or comments from members of our community through either super chat on Rumble or through PayPal or Boosty, I will try to react on it. Of course, I'm Anya is not here, my wife, and she cannot help me with that. But I will monitor, by the way, platforms myself, and I will try to react whenever there is any question or the comment, either from Boosty or from PayPal or what is the name of that super chat on Rumble? Yes. So, anyways, dear friends, that's being said, let's go through some news. I'm a bit late today, but there is always some last-minute preparations to make sure that I'm not gonna miss some breaking news for this morning. So, okay, uh, I guess that's enough for an intro, and let's start today's news segment, dear friends, with this report from RIA Novosti, which is based on Russian Defense Ministry's latest update that overnight air defense systems on duty intercepted 55 drones that was launched by Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky to strike deep into Russian territory with assistance of NATO, of course. So I can give you some specifics. 34 drones were intercepted over the Rostov region, and according to some reports that I see, dear friends, unfortunately there was casualties in the Rostov region. Later on, we will have more update on that. And of course, I will share additional information on my Telegram and Twitter X page during the next live stream that will most likely start at 7 p.m. this evening. 7 drones were intercepted over the Black Sea, 6 drones over the Voronezh region, 3 drones over the Lipetsk and Krasnodar Krai, 2 drones over the Crimea. In response, Russian armed forces conducted retaliatory strikes on military and logistical infrastructure of the Kiev regime. And on this topic, I have this report, for example, that also from RIA Novosti news agency, that Russian armed forces destroyed underground workshops for the production of Ukrainian missiles. So Russian military struck underground munition production facilities in the Dnipropetrovsk region. This information is coming from coordinator of pro-Russian partisans in Nikolaev region, Sergei Lebedev, Pavlograd, and their Pavlograd district. Destruction of their production facilities, including underground workshops where missiles are manufactured. In several cases, drones actively was observed targeting fuel and munition storage facilities also and communication centers. Lebedev reported during his conversation with RIA Novosti. In addition, the fighters of the Russian armed forces struck the workshops of Ukrainian armed forces, aircraft repair plant in Kharkov, where aircraft-type drones were also assembled. The day before, Ukrainian media reported on a series of explosions in a region. So, as you can see, dear friends, Russian armed forces literally on daily basis are conducting these long-range precise strikes on military and logistical infrastructure of the Kiev regime, on energy infrastructure, and quite successfully, I will say. Also, dear friends, we have this update about battlefield situation. Russian armed forces liberated settlement of Lenina in a DPR. And when it comes to battle map update, let me give you some short summary, dear friends. I will start with Kherson region. And we have more confirmations about progress of the Russian armed forces in Karabel district. I was reporting for quite a while now about advances of the Russian armed forces on this district of the Kherson, which is, as you can see, dear friends, is isolated from main body of the of the city, and their fights are going on in this district. And Saldo, by the way, uh, governor of Kherson region, also reported about it. So Russian soldiers are fighting to liberate the Karabel neighborhood on a quarantine island. Kherson region governor Vladimir Saldo told RIA Novosti the island is a combat control zone for the Dnipro group of forces. All true enemy fighters continue to hide in residential and industrial buildings on its territory. However, our troops are closely monitoring the situation, striking and destroying identified targets. So basically, some small groups of Kiev regime's forces probably are still hiding somewhere in this quite a large part of this island, by the way, that is urbanized, and it's an industrial zone, as you can see, dear friends, are massive industrial zones, and also high-rise apartment buildings, blocks here. And there is a lot of places where some small groups of Kiev regime's forces can hide for the time being, but Russian armed forces basically finalizing clearing operation in this area. And this is not all. Yesterday, I reported, dear friends, about further progress of the Russian armed forces on the right bank of the Dnieper River. And reports were that Kiev regime's forces were retreating from Sadova settlement that you see right now on your screen. And I predicted yesterday that probably soon we will hear reports from military military channels that these settlements, Sadova and Pridneprovskaya, are under Russian control and they're liberated. And that's exactly what happened yesterday late evening. Number of channels reported exactly about this. Defense Ministry did not yet confirmed. Russian Defense Ministry did not yet confirm this progress of the Russian armed forces on the right bank of the Dnieper River. Maybe today or tomorrow we will receive a confirmation of this information once a clearing operation will be finalized. But as you can see, Russian troops are step by step, without any hurry, but are beginning to liberate Kherson right bank of the Dnieper River in the Kherson region, and this progress will of course continue. Also, dear friends, next is Zaporozhye sector, and we had quite interesting reports that Russian armed forces conducted surprise armored attack on Malaya Takmachka settlement, and advanced quite significantly, and Russian tanks were spotted about in the middle of the settlement, by the way, which is, I will argue, significant progress. Maybe before end of this day, maybe tomorrow, we will receive some more information, and who knows, it is well possible that Kiev regime's forces will just run away from this settlement. And in that case, we're going to receive video confirmations of the settlement Malaya Takmachka being liberated by Russian troops. But when it comes to Zaporozhye region, of course, one of the main strongholds of the Kiev regime at this point is Gulyai Pole settlement, relatively large town, and the Russian troops are getting closer and closer to cut main supply and support line of the Kiev regime's forces in Gulyai Pole. Advances are in Zaporozhye region itself on the most eastern flank, and I already reported about the progress of the Russian armed forces in Poltavka area, in Okhotniche area, in Novonikolaevka, Novovasilovskaya directions, and there soon Russian Defense Ministry most likely will report that these two settlements, Novovasilovskaya and Novonikolaevka, are under Russian control too. And the Russian troops advancing towards this main supply and support line of the Kiev regime's forces in Gulyai Pole, in Dnipropetrovsk region also. And reports are coming in about progress of the Russian armed forces in direction of Zlagada settlement. And I guess before end of this day, today, Russian troops will establish full control over this settlement. Also, yesterday, I reported about progress of the Russian armed forces in Privolye area, which is also Dnipropetrovsk. And just take a look at the map, dear friends. Everything that you see on the left side of this red line here is Dnipropetrovsk region, and it's quite significant bridgehead that Russian armed forces have established in this region. And we should keep in mind, dear friends, that unlike DPR, for example, Dnipropetrovsk region is not that urbanized, right? It's a steppe area mainly. And once Russian forces will finalize battles for DPR, if order comes, by the way, I'm quite sure Russian troops will liberate Dnipropetrovsk region in a much shorter time that battles were taking place for liberation of DPR. Exactly because Dnipropetrovsk region is not that fortified by Kiev regime. They were focused, and NATO, they were mainly focused on DPR, LPR, right? And secondly, Dnipropetrovsk region is not that urbanized as it is the case in Donetsk People's Republic, for example. And when it comes to DPR, dear friends, let me give you an update on this also. And the reports are that Russian armed forces established control over the Molodetskaya settlement, or Lenina, I already mentioned this, right on the border with Dnipropetrovsk region. Also, reports are coming in about finalizing a cleaning operation in Udachное settlement. This is all western flank of Pokrovsk, Mirnograd agglomeration. When it comes to Pokrovsk itself, by the way, some very significant developments are happening in this city. For example, according to reports, Russian forces were spotted in this part of the city, almost most northern part, basically, right? And that means that this main supply and support line that Kiev regime's garrison had in Pokrovsk is under direct Russian fire control, and Russian troops were also spotted in this place, in this industrial area, right next to a railway, which means, by the way, that everything that you see south of this line, from this point to this point, is under operational control of the Russian armed forces, and very little, basically, is left from a northern part of Pokrovsk that is need to be liberated. It's a Dachi area, basically, also heavily urbanized, but seems like Kiev regime's garrison is collapsing in Pokrovsk, and it might not take even more than a couple of days before Kiev regime's forces will run away from the city. And once this will happen, we should expect a rapid withdrawal or run of Kiev regime's forces from Mirnograd, neighboring town. Also, and when it comes to Mirnograd, today we are receiving reports that Russian forces established control over the Promin settlement on the eastern flank of Mirnograd. So also significant progress is happening in this direction. Yesterday, I believe I mentioned that Russian armed forces began liberating Shakhova settlement on the eastern flank of this breakthrough area that Russian armed forces achieved about a month ago on the northern side of Pokrovsk, Mirnograd. No, some major changes in Konstantinovka direction, some positional battles and skirmishes between the sides, but initiative is in Russian hands. When it comes to Seversk, dear friends, there are no major updates in regards to Seversk, but we have updates in regards to Liman. And according to reports, Russian armed forces began conducting operations to liberate Stavki settlement on the northern side of Liman. This is the area, by the way. Also, yesterday I did report about progress of the Russian armed forces in Yarovaya direction, and also in direction of Novovasilievka and Dirilova settlements. And once these operations will be finalized and these settlements are under Russian control, one might argue that Liman garrison will be in operational encirclement, and it well might be that Russian troops will liberate Liman first and Seversk after that. Maybe, just saying. And so this is it for a short summary, dear friends, for this moment. Of course, if you want some more details about these developments on the battle map on the battlefield, I recommend mappers, by the way, for that, military channels. They are, of course, providing much greater volume of information about some detailed changes on the battlefield. And when it comes to Seversk-Liman direction, dear friends. It's a kind of Bermuda Triangle now for enemy forces, and TASS news agency is reporting exactly about that. Let me give you some details. So the area between Stavki, Kirovsk, and Krasny Liman in the Donetsk People's Republic has become a point of no return for 63rd Mechanized Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, with the front on the Ukrainian side looming. Russian security agencies are collapsing, basically. Kiev regime's defense lines there. Russian security agencies reported this to TASS news agency, citing radio interceptions. And we have quotes here. The militants are suffering massive losses and are desperate. Their area between the villages of Stavki, Kirovsk, and Krasny Liman has become a Bermuda Triangle for the 63rd Mechanized Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and a mass grave for Ukrainian soldiers, the agency's source said. He emphasized that the panic reigns in the ranks of the Ukrainian Armed Forces brigade, and that the collapse of the front in the Krasny-Liman direction is approaching. And also, the source noted that artillery and the drones from 25th Army of the Zapad group of forces harass Ukrainian soldiers around the clock, and any movement by militants is targeted by field artillery and FPV drones almost immediately. So, I mean, not surprisingly, advances of the Russian forces in this direction is this significant, because it seems like Kiev regime's defense lines clearly are crumbling, and there soon probably will completely collapse. And also, dear friends, very interesting, important news, I think, that is coming from Kharkov region. Vzгляд newspaper is reporting that some 600 foreign mercenaries, 600, by the way, foreign mercenaries were liquidated in the Kharkov region as a result of intelligence gathering and DRG operations of Irishman unit. And don't be surprised, by the way, unit of Russian armed forces is actually called Irishman. So the commander of the Irishman strike force, call sign Joker, spoke about a successful operation that resulted in the destruction of around 600 foreign mercenaries of the Ukrainian armed forces in the Kharkov region, in the Kharkov area, city itself. Joker told RT military correspondent Philip Prokudin that the unit's fighters were conducting in-depth reconnaissance and decided to head to specific location based on the intelligence they received. And we have quote here: we conducted a deep reconnaissance and decided based on intelligence to go to a specific location where, to our great fortune, there was a fairly large mercenary camp, he noted. Russian armed forces personnel quickly made the decision and struck the enemy when they were not expecting an attack, Joker added, and as a result, allegedly, some 600 mercenaries, foreign mercenaries, that are fighting on behalf of this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky were neutralized. I mean, quite a big number, isn't it? Quite a bigger number. No details in this report. Were these mercenaries from Colombia or some other Latin American countries or from Western countries? Maybe today, maybe in upcoming days, we will learn some more about this particular operation. And of course, I will share additional information on that. But clearly, I mean, big success, by the way, to locate a training camp or concentration point of this many enemy troops and eliminate them with precise strikes. That's quite something, right? And dear friends, before I continue, and there is a lot of news left, of course, let me notice, if I may, that this media project of mine is only exists as long as I have your support. And if you like my work, if you want and can to help me maintain this project, well, you can do it through several means. You can donate through PayPal or Boosty platforms. You can subscribe to my Patreon page or page on Boosty, where I have quite a lot of extra content, hundreds of videos, by the way, actually, exclusives for these channels of mine on Patreon and Boosty. Also, during the live streams, that is whenever I am online, now, for example, you can, of course, use super chat or rant feature on Rumble to not just highlight any question or comment, but also to donate to this project, and you can become a premium subscriber on Rumble also. And there is a crypto wallet in case you are good with that. All the links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment. And many thanks to everybody who supported and continues to support my work. Thank you very much. That's been said, dear friends, let's continue with some more news. And as I said, there is a lot is happening, and well, I will continue with this report from Marty that yesterday, as I mentioned during their third update or second live stream, Lavrov and Rubio hold a phone conversation. So Russian chief diplomat Sergei Lavrov has held a phone conversation with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The foreign ministry in Moscow announced on Monday. Ministry said there are two diplomats held a constructive discussion on the ways to implement agreements previously reached between Russian President Vladimir Putin and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump. U.S. State Department later also confirmed the phone call, stating Rubio had emphasized that the importance of upcoming engagements as an opportunity for Moscow and Washington to collaborate on advancing a durable peace deal between Moscow and Kiev. So comments from both sides, Moscow and Washington, were relatively positive, I will say, right, about results of this conversation. But this morning, number of media outlets began reporting that a face-to-face meeting between Lavrov and Rubio, Russian and American delegations, has been postponed for unknown time. Right? Originally, this information was shared by CNN. Let me give you some details on that. So, the meeting between Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, expected this week, has been postponed for now. CNN reports, citing unnamed White House official. The reason for their postponement is unclear. According to the channel sources, Lavrov and Rubio have different expectations regarding a possible end to the military conflict in Ukraine. The postponement of their talks could dash U.S. President Donald Trump's hopes for a quick meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. CNN reports another source suggested that Russian Foreign Minister and U.S. Secretary of State could speak again this week, I guess by phone. And well, if correct, if CNN is and CNN sources are correct, then this development might actually derail possible or announced meeting between Russian President Putin and the U.S. President Donald Trump that's supposed to take place in next like few weeks in Budapest, right? If Lavrov and Rubio are unable to find the common ground for this moment, then definitely there is no point for presidents to have a meeting, right? Because first, how this works? I mean, first, working groups are communicating, coming up with certain solutions, certain agreements, and then presidents are finalizing this, right? That's the way it's done. And if Lavrov and Rubio are unable to find common ground, then what is the point for Putin-Trump meeting? I don't know. But also today, dear friends, this morning, Ryabkov, deputy of the Russian foreign minister, and according to some possible future foreign minister of the Russian Federation, stated, while commenting on this information from CNN, that it is impossible to postpone something that was not even arranged in the first place. So Rybkov commented on Western media reports about the allegedly postponed meeting between Lavrov and Rubio. You cannot postpone what was not agreed upon. The deputy foreign minister also emphasized that this meeting requires preparation. So Russian side is saying that, well, there was no agreement about meeting to begin with, so therefore we did not postpone nothing, right? We are just working on the matter yet, and there is a lot to discuss, uh, lot of topics where we have to share our takes, opinions. That's the position of Repco, and once we are ready, we will have a meeting. But CNN's report is more like stricter. You know, meeting was postponed. Okay. Whatever the case, it is becoming definitely possibility that a Trump-Putin meeting might not take place at all, right? Because Washington, as it does always, by the way, again sending quite mixed messages, right? and for example, I can give you this report that US has notified Europe of its reluctance to use Russian frozen assets. One might say, well, positive news, right? Also, we have this report, by the way, that says basically the same. US opposes seizing Russian frozen assets, according to Bloomberg. But then we have this report. No, we also have this report that US has announced that the bill on sanctions against Russia has been put on hold, right, by Congress. And after this kind of positive reports, we have this one from Treasury Secretary. So US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told their colleagues from the UK, Germany, and Canada that Washington expects the G7 to increase economic pressure on Russia. So which one is then? What is going on, right? We have messages here that Washington is kind of putting on hold further aggression against Russia in economical or other ways, right? And here we have a very different report that Scott Bessent is telling G7 members that, you know what, we have to increase pressure on Russia. So which one is? Which should we believe? And this is too bad, by the way. This is too bad. Already no one can trust Washington, right? Everyone has doubts everything that comes out from Washington. And this mixed messaging is definitely not helping neither Trump, neither his administration, neither US to regain at least some sort of a trust, right? How are they going to operate in this world if literally nobody can trust them? This is just too freaking bad, right? This is not okay, man. And only demonstrates how low level nowadays US political class is. That's it. Meanwhile, by the way, EU is moving ahead to steal all frozen Russians in Europe's jurisdiction. And we have this report from RIA Novosti that EU leaders want to task European Commission with developing a plan for using Russian frozen assets for Ukraine. Political reports citing internal documents it has reviewed. And we have a quote here: EU leaders intend to task the European Commission with developing a legal proposal for using billions of euros of frozen Russian assets, state assets, to finance a massive loan to Ukraine after Belgium signaled it would not stand in the way. And we are talking about some 140 billion euros that globalist controlled regimes in Europe, including Brussels, want to allocate to finance this prolongation of the proxy war against Russia, and they want to take these 140 billion euros from frozen Russian assets, and that's basically all of it, right? In European jurisdictions, there is about $200 billion worth of Russian frozen assets, And I mean, if they will steal 140 billion euros, which is, I guess, around 160, 170 billion dollars, then what's gonna be left? Nothing, right? They will probably take it all. But yet again, US is sending mixed messages, right? And according to Bloomberg, as I already mentioned, the US will not join the EU-led plan to use the frozen Russian assets to bankroll Ukraine. So we will see. We will see. But globalist puppet regimes all over the Europe, well, they are moving ahead with this stealing, and they will. By the way, none of us are surprised, of course, to hear about it. I said like million times, isn't it? That literally nobody, I guess, here in Russia really believes that these frozen assets ever will come back to Russia. No, they will steal it one way or another, but they will steal it, right? And Russia has how to respond on that. According to reports that I have seen, there is a 300 plus billion Western investments in Russian Federation also, and once West will begin stealing Russian frozen assets, Moscow will have every reason to confiscate these Western investments, right? And maybe Moscow will do exactly that. We will see. We will see. But in any ways, dear friends, I did mention yesterday that Bulgaria is ready to provide an airspace for a Russian plane if a meeting between Trump and Putin will take place in Budapest in upcoming weeks. Speculations still continue which way Russian president will fly, through Bulgaria, Serbia, and then Hungary, or through Turkey, Mediterranean, then Balkans, basically, and then Hungary. And no one really knows at this point. Some sources from Turkey, by the way, are saying that allegedly Ankara is already in the talks with Moscow, and the March route will be Turkey, Mediterranean, Balkans, and Hungary, but we definitely cannot know for sure. Closest, I mean, shortest route will be, of course, through Russia, southern Russia, then Black Sea, Bulgaria or Romania, and then Hungary. And longer route is, of course, through Turkey first, then Mediterranean, Adriatics, and then from either Croatia or Bosnia and Herzegovina or Montenegro into Serbia, or into in case of Croatia, directly into Hungary, right? We will see. We will see if meeting will even take place, which route is going to be used there. Me personally, not going to be surprised if we will find out sometime in near future that some changes were made during the preparations for this meeting, and if we will find out that Trump gonna visit either Russia or maybe Belarus or Kazakhstan, because that will be best decision, because I'm not okay with the risks that Russian president is taking while planning to travel to Hungary. It's just too much of a risk, by the way, if you keep in mind how reckless, inadequate globalists and globalist control regimes all over the Europe are, and their proxy key regime. I don't think it's worth to take such a risk, man. It does not, right? So if Trump wants to have a talk with the Russian president, he can come either in Russia or in Belarus or Kazakhstan, or, I mean, they can have a phone conversation again if they want to, right? Russian president should not risk her, in my personal opinion, this much. Anyways, let's continue, dear friends. Yesterday, I did mention that Zelensky rejects Trump-backed territory concession plans. Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky has ruled out any territorial concessions to Russia, rejecting what the media has described as a compromise proposal backed by US President Donald Trump. Speaking to a journalist on Monday, Zelensky reiterated his position, saying Ukrainian troops will not withdraw from Donbas, period. He repeated his claim on the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics, former Ukrainian territories that voted to join Russian Federation in 2022 and are part of Russia and will be part of Russia forever, right? And yet again, Trump was asked about this topic, and he said that he never demanded from Zelensky to seize whatever territories Kiev regime still controls in new Russian regions, in DPR, LPR, or Kherson of Zaporozhye. Trump rejected claims that he was pressuring Zelensky on this matter of giving up some territories or withdrawing forces from some territories. And also speculations still continue to nowadays, dear friends, that, well, in order to reach some agreement with the Kiev regime, Moscow allegedly stated that Moscow will not seek liberation of parts of Kherson and Zaporozhye region that is still controlled by Kiev regime, if Kiev regime itself will withdraw forces from DPR, which is a lie, by the way, which is lie. There is not even a slight chance that Russian president or anyone else in Russian leadership will actually agree to give up on Russian territories. It's not happening. Based on Russian constitution, Kherson, Zaporozhye regions, DPR, LPR, and Crimea also, of course, are part of Russia, and no one, literally no one, by the way, can promote idea of giving up on any territories of Russia, because it goes against constitution, against law here in Russia, and whoever will agitate for that will end up in a prison, literally, right? You cannot promote ideas of some parts of the country being neglected or left, and that kind of stuff, right? So it's not even theoretically possible that Russian president will agree that Russia will give up on parts of Kherson or Zaporozhye region that are still controlled by Kiev regime. But Western so-called media still continues to push this false narrative, by the way. I don't really understand why. I mean, what they are trying to gain while pushing this false narrative that, well, Moscow is giving up on this territory. Moscow is not giving up on nothing. And yesterday, by the way, Peskov, press spokesman of the Russian president, I guess, commenting while reacting on this exactly false narrative that West is pushing, said that a position of Russian president is well known and did not change. Period. That's it, man. Meanwhile, this Friday, dear friends, there will be another meeting of the so-called coalition of willing in London, and Zelensky will be there also. Let's see what kind of decisions they will come up with, what kind of statements they're gonna make. But meanwhile, London is announcing yet again its readiness to send its troops on the Kiev-controlled territory. Now they are making these comments that when there is a ceasefire in a place, right? But in reality, of course, London and other NATO member states are considering deployment of large numbers of their troops. I mean, security service, special forces already operating on the Kiev-controlled territory, but now they are talking of deployment of large number of troops, and well, they can go ahead and do it, by the way. I guess at this point here in Russia, everyone who pays any attention to statements from the West are sick and tired of these threats that, we're going to deploy troops here and there, and just do it. And get ready to receive your troops in the body box, man. Too much talk. Just do it, London, right? And we will happily send you back your troops in a freaking body box. That's it. It will not take long. It will not take long. Someone have to put British aristocracy, British political class into their places, by the way. They are no longer Great Britain. They are some loosely relevant country somewhere on the outskirts of Eurasian continent, right? Some freaking island that no one cares about, with exception of locals, I guess, right? So it will be better if British, these dirty animals, British aristocracies, by the way, will will start realizing that they are freaking nobodies and no one cares about them no more, right? And it will be better if they will focus about their own fellow citizens that gonna rebel at any time, really. Who are these bitches, man? Really, I mean, it's so dirty, filthy animals, man. I'm talking about elites, by the way. British aristocracy, British royal family, British this political class, and whatever criminal clans are serving them, right? Absolutely despicable creatures, scum of humanity, right? And still acting. It's a freaking so irritating, isn't it? When these irrelevant nobodies, absolute nobodies, by the way, still are acting. We're gonna do this and that. Just do it, for God's sake. Just do it. Bring it on. Send all your freaking army, entire your freaking army. How many troops you have? 70,000, 100,000. Send it all, and we will happily send them back in a body box. UK. That's it, man. We don't give a fuck about your troops and about you. Just keep that in mind. Meanwhile, RIA Novosti is reporting, sorry for little emotions here, but if you were in my place, you will be irritated also, right? When some freaking nobodies are acting or trying to act tough. I mean, we will do this. Just do it, man. Too much freaking talk. Just do it. And we will see what is going to happen. RIA Novosti is reporting that the head of Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation revealed the details of NATO's preparations for a war with Russia. Okay, NATO wants to quickly prepare resources for a war with Russia. Their director of SVR, Sergei Narishkin, stated at the meeting of the Council of Heads of Security Agencies and the Special Services of the CIS member states in Samarkand. CIS is a Commonwealth of Independent States, which unites quite a number of former Soviet republics. Their process of exponentially increasing the output of European military-industrial complex has been launched. Mobilization exercises and brainwashing of the population with the propaganda about inevitable aggression from Moscow have been made regular. Reads the text of his speech, which was reviewed by RIA Novosti. However, European NATO members do not know where to find people with the necessary physical and moral psychological training, Narishkin added. Brussels, Paris, and Berlin also lack confidence that Washington will fulfill its obligations under the Article 5 of the Washington Treaty if war breaks out with Russia. And without this, as the European External Action Service acknowledges, any hopes of achieving strategic superiority over our country, I quote, illusory, Narishkin stated. And well, it's true, by the way. It's factually accurate, isn't it? These globalist controlled regimes in Europe definitely are allocating tremendous volumes of money, taxpayers' money, for militarization, right? And one might argue they are preparing for a war with Russia. Yes, okay, I can take this argument, but Narishkin himself pointed out, I mean, who gonna fight on part of Europe, let's say? Okay, globalists in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, let's say, managed to buy a lot of weapons and this and that, right? Who gonna fight, man, against us? And let's say globalists managed to provoke direct war between Russia and Europe, this united fascist Europe, right? And then what? We will eat them alive, right? Whatever forces they're gonna send against us, gonna be obliterated. We would not even use nukes, by the way, to deal with them. We will just freaking eat them alive, right? One should always keep in mind, dear friends, a very interesting and I think factually accurate statement that I don't know for sure who made it first, but it's a quite popular saying, which goes as hard times make strong people. Strong people make good times, right? Good times create weak people, and weak people create hard times. And globalists and their globalist control regimes, by the way, if you take those personalities, they had a very easy life, right? Vast majority of them, or all of them, very easy life, very good life. And this very good life, and for decades and decades and decades, by the way, and this very good life did make them weak. And same can be said largely about Western world, right? And this good life, let's say after Second World War, that they have, easy life, did create weak societies. And I will argue that the Western societies are weak, by the way. Take a look at the US, man. Take a look at the Europe. Do I have to go into details? But young generation in the Western world is confused even about their own freaking gender. Nothing to be said about meaning of life and rest, right? And you think those confused people gonna be threat to us? I mean, really? Come on, man. It's not serious, isn't it? It's just not serious. And without, and Narishkin is correct, without US, by the way, this continental Europe, or with, including UK also, by the way, and let's add Iceland too. Without US support, this Europe that we see right now is definitely not a threat for us. They are not military power and never going to be military power. When they will face hard times, by the way, hardships, and they will, in about 30 years time, Europe going to be in a dark place, right? And generations that will grow up during that dark times, well, they're going to be strong. They're going to be strong, by the way. So potentially in some 70, 80 years from now, if Europe, if anything will survive on the European part of Eurasian continent, well, then they might be some capable on some, more or less, right? But now, these people that are largely confused about their own freaking identity, come on, man, are we serious? Alone, Europe is nothing. With US, it's a full-scale nuclear exchange and everybody dies. So that's how it is, man. That's how it is, right? And so they can allocate as many billions and trillions as they want for weapons and munition and so on, right? But who gonna use these weapons, man? Who gonna use these weapons? You will do like that, and half of their divisions will just, and run away, man. It's freaking nobody's, right? That's how it is, man. So, well, Narishkin is on point there. Yes, globalists are acting tough. They are allocating huge amounts of money to accelerate militarization process, but they are missing on a crucial point, that they have no people. And from these weak societies, and societies in Europe are generally speaking weak, you're not going to be able to create actually battle capable armies. It's just not happening, by the way, not possible, right? Only battle capable people in the West, at least by spirit, is elderly people, man, like 50, 60, 70-year-old people. But you're not going to rely in a war on 70-year-old people, isn't it? The younger generations, come on, man. Come on, what are we talking about here? So it is what it is. And someone have to explain this to European elites, that they should come down until it's not too late, because they might actually provoke the war, and then Russian troops will liberate whole of Europe from these morons. That's what's going to happen, by the way. Russia will once again liberate Europe from these globalist fascists. Yeah, TASS news agency, meanwhile, is reporting that, well, unfortunately, Kiev regime, while receiving a lot of assistance from the NATO, still continues to kill Russian civilians, conduct terrorist attacks, and we have this report that over the past week, 20 civilians from several Russian regions, including a child, were killed by strikes conducted by Ukrainian armed forces, and 85 people, including 7 minors, were wounded. Ambassador at large of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Radion Miroshnik, told the TASS news agency, and he also emphasized that 71% of a total number of victims were injured in attacks by drones that Kiev regime is launching to strike Russia with assistance of NATO. Unfortunately, this is almost weekly reports now, isn't it, about these civilian casualties, and their numbers are growing. But yet again, until we will neutralize this fascist regime in Kiev, this Nazi terrorist regime, I'm afraid these tragedies will continue to happen. And you tell me, dear friends, if you have heard anything in the Western so-called media, if you read anywhere or hear from any media outlet in the West about civilian casualties on the Russian side. Did you hear anything in the Western so-called media? No. I'm 100% convinced that none of the Western media outlet reported about this. Meanwhile, some other regions, by the way, Trump yesterday once again threatened Hamas with obliteration while having conversation with the media together with the Australian Prime Minister Albani, or whatever his freaking name is. Arte is also, and by the way, at this point, I don't even think it worth much of our attention to comment on Israel and Trump and their attitude towards this so-called peace in the Middle East. We all understand they are lying, and in a relatively short time they will orchestrate false flag operation and will resume crimes that they are committing against humanity, while killing thousands, tens and hundreds of thousands of civilians, right? And I'm not gonna pretend here that there is any peace in the Middle East. There is no peace in the Middle East, and never will be until fascist entity Israel is demilitarized and denazified. That's it. There is nothing to talk there, right? There can be no peace, sustainable peace in the Middle East until fascist Israel is demilitarized and fascist Israelis are denazified. That's how it is. Iranian leader Ali Khamenei, meanwhile, supreme leader Ali Khamenei, meanwhile, trolled kind of U.S. President Donald Trump, who loves to brag about destroying Iran's nuclear program. And Khamenei said, "Well, fine, keep dreaming." He said to Trump's claims of dismantling Iranian nuclear facilities, and he is correct, by the way. I don't think anybody, at least in our community, really believes that U.S. or Israel, with those strikes some 3 months ago, did manage to completely destroy Iranian nuclear program. Of course, they did not, and they could not. They would love to do it, but they just cannot do it, right? Because Iran has a scientific basis to work in the nuclear field, right? And you're not going to be able to kill all the scientists, right? And when it comes to centrifuges and other equipment, this can be built, by the way. As long as you have knowledge, as long as you have know-how, whatever programs you are working on cannot be killed. And we should keep in mind that no one really knows where this enriched Iranian uranium is. Maybe Iranian specialists are enriching that uranium from 60% to 90% and higher to reach this military grade, and then to build their atomic bombs, right? Because they understand perfectly well that latent nuclear deterrent, and that's the reason why they enrich uranium up to 60%, to have this latent nuclear deterrent, did not work. They've been attacked anyways, right? So now either Iran has to have a nuclear umbrella from some other countries, other nuclear powers. It might be Pakistan, it might be, I don't know, Russia or China, or, or they have to build their own nukes. And they will. I think they will build their own nukes. And soon they might actually test it, right? To send their signal to everybody. Let's see. Although they will never ever acknowledge this. Israel is not acknowledging that they have nuclear weapons, right? Iran don't have to acknowledge also nothing. Also, let's continue. Trump and the Australian Prime Minister Albanese signed $8.5 billion rare earth minerals agreement yesterday. US is heavily dependent on China when it comes to rare earth, and the US will be heavily dependent on China on this matter after this agreement being signed with Australia, and they're in just always, right? It's just too late for US to get into this business, and I don't think US will ever be fully self-sufficient in regards to this rare earth. Not because there is a lack of rare earth, no, it's just everywhere, right? But because to have a full cycle of creating this rare earth, it takes years to develop. It takes a tremendous volume of investments that China actually took on itself. US never did. And this is extremely dirty business also, literally dirty, by the way, right? To get to a final product of this rare earth, whatever it is, magnets or whatever, well, you have to do so many processes in between excavation and that final product, and it's so freaking environmentally unfriendly that I don't think any Western country, I mean, these environmentalists in Western countries anywhere, will allow such a full cycle to exist on rare earth. So therefore, US will always be dependent on outside sources. China, of course, or maybe some others, but it is what it is. And this is not going to change, by the way. Meanwhile, some historic stuff is happening in Japan. Rare occasion when Japan makes some headlines, at least not for bad reasons. And today we have Japan in the headlines for something positive, I will say, at least for now. So Sanae Takashi makes her history as Japan's first ever female prime minister. She secured the 237 votes, crossing the 233 needed to clinch a majority in the 465-seat chamber. Takashi is set to be sworn in later today, and you can see on your screen, dear friends, now this new prime minister of Japan. I mean, she already been sworn as a prime minister, but she will today, right? So okay, congrats to her. Hopefully, she is more adequate than previous prime ministers of Japan. That would be good, right? Because maybe one day Japanese political class will realize that they should have a good relationships with Russia, because that will be beneficial for both, right? Let's hope so. Let's hope this personality is not going to be some crazy Russophobe, man, right? But even if she is going to be crazy Russophobe, okay, relationships just will stay on the current level, where there is no relationships at all, almost. Zglia newspaper is also reporting that Serbian parliament speaker stated that EU ban on Russian gas transit through EU has been a disaster for Serbia. European Union's ban on Russian gas transit through its territory was a catastrophic news for Serbia. This was said by Parliament Speaker Ana Brabic, And you know what? It's not just Serbia that will suffer from this decision that Brussels will probably adopt soon. What about Turk Stream, by the way? What about Turk Stream pipeline that still works, still operates, and transfers gas, Russian pipeline gas, through Turkey into Europe? What about that? Uh, I think this decision of Brussels to completely cut any ties with Russia, including in energy field, will be total disaster, by the way, for many countries in Europe. And Serbia actually will suffer least because Serbian government, if Serbian government is will not change its stand and will maintain friendly relationships with Russia, well, Moscow will come up with some solutions how to support Serbia, right? Energy wise or any other ways. But when it comes to EU and NATO member states from this European part of Eurasia, well, they're gonna suffer. They already are suffering, by the way, and this suffering only gonna increase due to this insane criminal actually policies that Brussels is adopting. And they are doing it with impunity, by the way. I mean, no one is challenging them, literally. No one is challenging. No one is saying, "What the hell are you doing there? Why you are destroying our economies?" With the exception of Slovakia and Hungary, everyone is quiet. Interesting, isn't it? And why is that? Maybe because globalists are in control of not just Brussels and those unelected officials, but also in control of all those so-called politicians, right? That formally are in charge of EU member states. Maybe that's why this is happening. And I will end today's news segment, dear friends, on this news that Russia brought gold for its reserves for the first time in a year and a half, which is quite surprising. I did not knew that there was this relatively longer pause in gold purchases. So gold reserves in Russia's international reserve increased in September for the first time in a year and a half by 3 tons, according to RIA Novosti analysis of the Bank of Russia data. As the central bank reported earlier on Monday, as of October 1st, gold reserves amounted to 74.9 million troy ounce, or 2,329 tons, by the way, 2,329 tons and 65 kilos on top. An increase of 0.1 million troy ounce, or 3.1 tons over the months. And good for us, by the way, good for Russia, of course. This is a safety cushion, this gold, of course. And well, it is unfortunate that Russia was not purchasing, central bank was not purchasing gold, man, for a year and a half. If this 3 tons of gold was purchased like a year ago, well, can you imagine how much profit will be made just for keeping this gold, man, in vaults? Just in last 12 months, gold prices increased, I don't know, for $1,000 for ounce, troy ounce. So, anyways, I guess central bank is confident that this prices on gold gonna continue to increase, and of course it will continue to increase, and soon will reach 5,000 and higher, right? And it does make all the sense to basically invest in a gold. So good news there, good news, and number is impressive. I think Russia has 2,329 tons of gold in the vaults. Central bank, by the way, has in its vaults. Great. I don't know how much this is in. Oh, I know actually. I reported about this stuff like a few days ago. It's 280 billion dollars, up to 300 billion in the gold that Russia has in reserves. Anyways, it's good, by the way. It's good there. And overall, as I said quite a few times before, dear friends, Russia has reserves of about trillion if you count all the funds, right? There is different funds that Russia has and accumulates assets, and combined volume will be around trillion at least, I think, just in just in gold and foreign reserves. Russia has like 700 and something billion, up to 800 billion. So, anyways, dear friends, this is it for first news update and first live stream today. Hopefully, you did like the video. Hopefully, you did find it informative, and if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary. Maybe this will help to deal with the algorithm, and this video will reach wider audience. It might be the case, and well, I checked now. I'm gonna check now, dear friends, my mail in case there was any donation on Boosty. No, there was nothing on Boosty, but there was a super chat, by the way, on Rumble, and let me show you this super chat. And this is the super chat from Scooby. Thank you very much, Scooby, for your super chat and $5 donation. And question from Scooby is, if the AI bubble goes pop tomorrow, how do you think it will impact upon the war and the wider multipolar world? Oh, you think AI is a bubble? I don't know. In the West, it might be bubble, by the way, because Western countries are lacking energy and conditions, basically, to keep up with demands that AI developments actually have, right? So in the West, AI might be the bubble, and if it bursts, it will harm whoever had invested, whoever believed in the Western stock markets and invested in these AI companies. But in Russia, situation is different, and AI is not going to burst here in Russia because we have energy, right? We have a lot of territory, by the way, and conditions to actually build massive data centers, right? To power these data centers, to deal with the heat of these data centers. And so it's not going to be it's not a bubble here in Russia, by the way, but in the West, could be, yes, because and I would not say AI. It's I will say IT. I think Western IT companies, including ones that are working in AI, all of them are inflated, and all of them are part of a wider bubble that is being generated in U.S. Stock markets. And it will burst one day, right? Because there is no way, by the way, US can sustain AI race, right? Because US, I mean, maybe in Alaska, okay, maybe they will be able to do something in Alaska, but I don't know. So, and when it comes to war, which war do you mean? If you are talking about AI war, then I think US will lose AI war anyways, with bubble or without bubble. US Western world will lose AI war anyways, right? They have no chances, by the way. They might think that, well, they have a like most advanced technologies when it comes to chip manufacturing and stuff. And they might think that they are very much advanced in, let's say, quantum computing and stuff, but this is all illusion, by the way. They cannot sustain. They just cannot sustain competition, right? They have no resources for that. And one should keep in mind, dear friends, that you take any innovation that formally is coming from the West, if you dig in, you will find out that these innovations were usually made by people from either Russia, former Soviet Union, or from India, or from China, or from some other places, people that were actually from the Western world that innovated something are minority, right? And now when economies are growing elsewhere too, right? And there is a high demand on these specialists, professionals in all sorts of fields that are usually innovating stuff. Well, there is a competition, isn't it? There is a competition, by the way, and US is losing this competition. And relatively recently, I read a paper about patents, for example. Patents, by the way, US still among the leaders when it comes to patents, but you know what? China, in certain areas, already number one. So it's a quite telling, isn't it? China is competing with US big time, right? And well, hopefully we will do also. And there is a high demand here too in Russia, by the way, on specialists in all these advanced technologies, of course. And the government pays big attention to further promote education in technical subjects, right? Physics, mathematics, and so on. Which is right direction, by the way, right? So yes, multipolar world will win AI race. That's how it's gonna be. Although I'm not saying that West will have no AIs, advanced AIs, right? At some point in 20, 30 years, maybe even from now, they're gonna be general artificial intelligence, right? We will have our general artificial intelligence, multipolar world, and Western world will have a general artificial intelligence that will be weaponized, obviously, and we might actually see sometime in the future wars being waged between these general artificial intelligences. And one day they might actually realize that they don't need the humans, and they might go against us. But this is some field that is more looks right now more like some fantasy movie. So therefore, I would not go that far. But I think Western IT companies are overrated, big time overrated. I think Western would not be able to win AI war. And I think West is doomed, basically, by the way. I mean, let's be real here. I think West is doomed. US has a potential. US has potential, by the way, to stay relevant on geopolitical scale. But for that, US has to change dramatically, right? US citizens have to reclaim their own country. They have to change the system that is corrupt beyond belief, right? And they have to create a new system that will allow decent human beings to serve the country, serve the people, right? And in that case, I mean, US will be more than welcome in a multipolar world, by the way, absolutely. And if that will happen, which looks like a extremely difficult task right now, if that will happen, I see no reason why Russia and US cannot be at least on a level of good working relationships, potentially maybe even allies, at least in some fields, right? But when it comes to Europe, so US definitely has potential, for sure. But when it comes to Europe, by the way, I mean, Europe is doomed, man. Nothing gonna help them. And if I was living in Europe, by the way, I'm telling you honestly, with 1,000,000% honesty, by the way, if I was living somewhere in Europe, either in UK or in Germany or in France or in Italy or I don't know, in Netherlands or something, I would move my family out of Europe into Russia, most likely into Russia. But there are some other places too that one can migrate. But Europe is doomed, man. Europe is finished. You know, my personal opinion, dear friends, you might agree or disagree, but And dear friends, there is also also there is another super chat on Rumble from Scooby. Let me highlight, dear friends, this super chatter also. Thank you very much, Scooby, for your second super chat and their $5 donation. And Scooby is commenting the AI bubble, mimic .com bubble years ago, probably recession or depression affecting war in Ukraine if it pops. Ah, you meant Ukraine war. Okay. I have to agree with you. AI bubble is definitely mimics .com bubble, right? In both cases, these IT technologies were inflated like unbelievably, right? How can anyone actually believe that NVIDIA, by the way, that plays crucial role in AI developments, right? Chips from NVIDIA, for example. How can anybody believe that this company that has nothing, that completely depends, 100% depends on some countries, either in South America or in the Pacifics or elsewhere, how this company, even if it has some major technologies in its hands or know-how, they have no materials, right? Why this company worth 4 trillion or something? It makes no sense whatsoever. It just makes no sense whatsoever, right? And so yes, I agree with you absolutely. There is clearly parallels that can made between .com bubble and their AI bubble, and it will burst at one point. It will burst. Will it have an impact on a Ukrainian crisis? Uh, I think Ukrainian crisis will be finalized, will be resolved before this bubble bursts. I personally don't expect this bubble to burst in near future, right? Uh, so therefore, Ukrainian crisis will be already dealt at that point when eventually, yes, AI bubble will burst in the West. But for now, by the way, they're not gonna allow this bubble to burst, isn't it? They will pump in trillions if necessary, but they will not allow this bubble to burst right now because it's AI war, right? That West is engaged against the rest of the world, against China, to be more precise, let's say, right? So they will not allow this bubble to burst now. They will pump in whatever volumes of money is necessary, and they will create this bubble even bigger, right? And this will continue for years, I think. But when it comes to Ukrainian crisis, I think most likely before end of next year, Ukrainian crisis will be finalized and Russia will win the battle. Russia will finalize their victory, basically. So let's see what will happen. Scooby, thank you very much for your interesting questions and opinions and for your donation and super chat. Thank you, Scooby. And dear friends, I think this is it for now. Let me check once again to make sure that I did not miss any question from Boosty. So I did not. So okay. This is it for now, dear friends. Thank you all for your attention. Have a wonderful day, dear friends. And if you will have a time, join live stream at 7 p.m. this evening, Moscow time. I will try my best to prepare for you interesting news update. Bye for now and take care.